What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching The Moore Show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. Now for the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Leonard Perlmutter. Now Leonard is the founder and director of the American Meditation Institute in New York. He also serves as the author and editor of Transformation, the Journal of Meditation as Mind-Body Medicine. Now he joins me today to discuss his latest book, The Heart and Science of Yoga. Leonard Perlmutter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for the invitation.
It's beautiful to have you on. Now, that robe you're dressed in, what is that clothing that you've got on there? It looks very much like something from a sort of a Buddhist kind of look.
This is an Indian kurta, and it's a very commonplace in India. What I like about it most is that it's very loose fitting, especially around the waist. When I was a child, I always have had a difficult time with Western pants. It seemed very constrictive, and it seemed to constrict my fascia and my internal organs, and it retarded digestion. It retarded assimilation, and it retarded elimination. So when I discovered these what is called a kurta or an asana suit, I just started wearing them, and I feel very comfortable. I can breathe diaphragmatically, so I'm relaxing, and at the same time I'm able to eat and digest and assimilate and eliminate quite well, quite easily. So
now the reason
it's just a practical tool.
Yeah. The reason I've said that, really, because the first thing that I'm drawn to you when looking at you is it feels very much like you've had a past life somewhere else, and you've brought that past life into this present moment right now. Or there's some teachings as well that have transformed you from some journey that you've been on to the person that you are now. Because you look very transformed. At peace.
Well, I feel that there is a flow, there is a continuity in my entire life. From my earliest moments, I was always very philosophically oriented. Where it came from, some people might say a past life experience, but I always seem to look at the world and look at situations, and I look at problems as situations rather than as real problems. And I have always been able to create a certain amount of detachment between stimulus and response. And when I started studying yoga science, I felt a kinship to the teachings. When I was a child, I was in the in the United States. I was in Cub Scouts and I was in the Boy Scouts. And gee, it was a terrific way to learn. What you learned is practical knowledge that helps you to become prepared for whatever life seemed to present to you.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when I began to study yoga science, I felt like I was back in Scouts because it was teaching me at this time in my life the kind of practical skills that I need to know what to think, what to say, and how to act in ways that will enable me to fulfill the purpose of my life.
Isn't that always the case, isn't it? No matter what we're going through right now, because now is all that matters. That's what I could say what we've been through before, but let's just bring it to now.
Right.
What we're going through right now, when we, probably, no, not probably, in a not too distant future, we'll look back and say that was all meant to be, that we went through that for a reason, just as you went through Boy Scouts for a reason. Yes. Everything in your life has probably been for a reason, but sometimes we just don't want to hear that, do we? Because it's painful right now, isn't it?
That's right. George Harrison had a wonderful quote that he was very fond of, something to the effect that if you don't know where you're headed, any road will lead you there.
Well, it's true, isn't it? All roadmaps, in the end, all roadmaps lead to that inner source, that inner wisdom that's always been with us and always will be, and it's come from somewhere, and we go back to it.
Well, that's because that's our destiny, right? We have come from the unknown. We are here now. And we are destined to go back to the unknown.
I love the way you put that. I've come from the unknown. I'm destined to go back to... You're not naming it. It's unknown.
Well, it's beyond my imagination, right? I could apply my imagination to it, but it wouldn't necessarily be true.
Well, unless you keep on imagining when you cross over that actually the imagination is part of the journey. When you go back over, you create the world of the unknown where you want to go to. Maybe it's not doctrined as it's this way or that. Right. It never was. Maybe this is
That's
just
what Shakespeare said, right?
Yeah,
there's no good, there's no bad. The only thinking makes it so.
Right. Well, what was your pinnacle awakening experience that led you on this journey then? What was your aha moment? Where did you lose the plot, in a sense, that made you want to go within and find a more peaceful solution?
My first experience with meditation when I was about 9 years old, perhaps 10, and I, like all children, I dealt with physical challenges. I dealt with emotional challenges. It's a tough assignment for sure to be a human being, especially as a young person, finding your way in life and where do you fit in. Right. But when I was about 9 or 10, I would sit down in my room and I would put on an Elvis Presley record. And for something like 2 minutes and 25 seconds, I was in a state of bliss and fullness. And I always wanted to reprise that type of experience in other ways. And I began to find that type of experience in meditation, so that I don't need a record. I don't need Elvis Presley. I don't need my wife. I don't need my child. I don't need a specific job or a specific relationship. I don't need an ice cream cone to be happy and to be full. And meditation does that. Meditation does something nothing else can. It introduces us to ourselves.
Could you name the self? I mean, is it unnameable, do you think?
Words are just pointers. They're an attempt by one human being to communicate something to another human being. So I could give you what I have learned, but it's only an approximation. So from the yogic tradition, there are three main characteristics of who we are. And the first is called Sat, S-A-T. It's a Sanskrit word, and it means eternal. So You and I are eternal beings. We were actually never born, and we actually never die. We are self-existent, not dependent on anything else for its existence. So, for example, on the highest level of consciousness, I have a body, but I am not the body, nor am I dependent on the body. So I am eternal. And that's not true necessarily with the body. It's not true with the apple that I ate this morning. It's not true with anything in the material world. Anything that is born is going to die, be subject to change, death, decay, and decomposition. But on the highest level of consciousness, I am an eternal being. That is the Sat. It's not dependent on anything else. The second characteristic of this spirit that I am is called Chit. Chit is consciousness, pure awareness. And part of consciousness, within consciousness, contains an intuitive library of wisdom. An intuitive library of wisdom is part of consciousness that can tell us 24/7 what is the thought to think, the word to speak, the action to take, that will enable us to fulfill the purpose of life without pain, misery, or bondage. So the first two characteristics are Sat and Chit. Who am I? I am eternal consciousness. And within consciousness resides an intuitive library of wisdom. And the third characteristic is Ananda. Ananda is bliss and fullness. It is the nature of consciousness, without an object, to be blissful and full. So I am Sat Chit Anand. I am eternal consciousness, wisdom, bliss. Having a human experience in time and space through a mind, body, sense complex. My job as a human being is to unite these two worlds. I am a citizen of two worlds simultaneously. I am a citizen of the material world. I have a body, I have a mind, I have thoughts, desires, emotions, concepts. I have senses. There are objects of senses that I look for. I smell them, I taste them, I hear them, I can touch them. But I am a citizen of two worlds simultaneously. My job is to unite the two worlds. And we unite them by basing our thoughts, words, and deeds on our own inner intuitive wisdom. And the more that my outer actions reflect my inner wisdom, the consequence that flows from those actions, thoughts, words, and deeds, will always lead me for my highest and greatest good. If there's a disconnect between my thoughts, words, and deeds and my own inner wisdom, the wisdom of the truth of consciousness that is within me, that is me, having this human experience, if there is inner conflict, that inner conflict becomes the mother of all problems. If I have conflict in my mind, there has to be conflict outside the mind. And the first intimate personal relationship that I have that's quote unquote outside the mind is the body. So my back aches, my blood pressure gets high. Why does that happen? The high blood pressure and the pain in the back are not really the problem. They're just a symptom of the fact that the mind is in conflict.
Hi guys, my name's Kevin Moore and I'm the host of The Moore Show. Now it's my purpose, my passion, my mission to help you guys become your greatest version. Now you might be looking to find answers on love, connecting with your life's purpose, reuniting with a loved one on the other side, discovering your past lives, or just helping you make sense in finding your direction. Now, as a multi-dimensional channel, I can connect with higher aspects of yourself to help you in this present moment to become your best version and live your most empowered life. Now you can book myself for a reading by going to tmspsychics.com/Kevin, or you can get a reading from one of my many gifted team of readers. The More Show Psychics, helping you transform your present moment to the most loving and happiest it can be. Now I also offer a full money back guarantee, so what have you got to lose? Empower your life today.
LandryAnka.net and The More Show bring you this opportunity to change your life. Are you ready to go after your dream life? It's possible. I know because I did it. I'm Landria, and I was an investment banker for 25 years, and I was stressed out. I wasn't living the life that I dreamed of. I knew that people like us could create automated income and freedom online, and all I had to do was get trained. You can do the same thing. The result for me, I created that life, and now I'm a professional award-winning author, and I have a movie out, and I do it for a living. You can do the same thing. You just have to be willing to learn. You can get free videos to find out about this. All you have to do is click on one of the buttons on this screen, and you can go to LandryAnka.net/KMS, and those free videos will come straight to your inbox, and you can learn more about creating the life.
Okay. And most minds, most people are in conflict with
Yes.
something.
Yes.
And when they're not in conflict, they're attracting the life that they so forth desire. They're attracting everything into their life, in a sense.
That's correct.
They're able. They're the highest of master manifestors when they're not saying one thing and then beating themselves down by saying the opposite.
Correct.
But where does most of this conflict come from then? Well, not come from, that's not the right word. How do we...
Well, that's close. That's
well,
close.
well, I was almost going to say that we want to eliminate it, but that's not even what I want to say either. What is it that... Okay, so you're in pain with some issue or something, pissed off about something, upset about whatever it may be. And again, it may not be coming through the body. It may be, okay, yes, it always expresses itself externally somehow. Maybe it's onto another partner. It could just be that, not even the way you're feeling,
It could be with my husband, with my wife, with my child, with my work, with the President of the United States, with the Prime Minister of England.
Right. So your life in the present moment is a reflection on how much... how in pain you are with yourself, maybe.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's maybe a visible sign. How happy am I with my, and how in alignment?
How content, how happy. That's right.
But so where's the heal? So how do we even get into what that is, and where's the healing in that? How do we fix it?
Well, if we're in enough pain, we'll begin to look outside the current matrix, because Albert Einstein says that a problem cannot be solved on the level at which it arises. It has to be solved on a higher level. And so yoga science provides the higher level for us, right? Yoga science and meditation help us to go outside the matrix. And the key is the bridge of yoga. Yoga means union. And from a yogic perspective, yoga as a bridge connects our outer action with our inner wisdom. And the more that we can base our outer action on our inner wisdom, then we're led for our highest and greatest good. The more there's conflict, the more there's pain. So the bridge of yoga is a philosophy, it's a science that provides a template for basing outer action on inner wisdom. But where does this all come from? The fact that the mind becomes attached to fear, it becomes attached to anger, it becomes attached to selfish desires that cause conflict in the mind. The origin of all of this is the ignorance of who I am, from where I have come, why I am here, what's to be done, and where I will go when the body dies. So the first, most profound practice is simply to ask ourselves, who am I? And in a relationship where an action is called for that brings about a consequence, before we commit our assets, we are asked to create a space between stimulus and response. A space between stimulus and response provides us freedom to ask the question, who am I? Who is aware of this thought that evokes fear? Who am I who is aware of the thought that evokes anger? Who am I who is aware of the thought that evokes selfish desire? That all conflict with my inner wisdom. And the more that we ask that question, who am I, slowly, slowly, if we are earnest, the answer will come. And with the answer comes a different perspective on the fear, a different perspective on the anger, a different perspective on the selfish desires. And when you change your perspective, you change your experience.
Wow. Okay. So the who am I, in a sense, it's for some people it's very difficult to even narrow that down, or even to. But it's a feeling process, isn't it? It's not in the mind. It's not. It's nothing mental. It's more of a you just feel your eternalism, don't you? And if you want to label it as whatever you might want to label it, that's okay. Yeah,
that's right.
That helps
right.
you,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, it's just a human concept, or whatever. If you want to call yourself a soul, or you're connected with your higher self, you can label it, and you've got no issue with that, have you?
No. I have no problem with that.
So what we're saying here, just to clarify, that most of the issues that we have, if we were just to meditate and go within to the I am part of us, whatever this label that we're going to label it as, for those out there watching and listening to this, then that would lead us to a lot of help in having our own answers, rather than having to even go to someone else for those answers as well.
What it leads to is the superconscious portion of the mind, which is beyond the conscious. It's beyond the unconscious.
Yes.
It's the same portion of the mind where Albert Einstein saw mathematical equations. It's the same portion of the mind where Paul McCartney hears beautiful melodies. Doesn't mean that I'm going to become a songwriter. And Kevin, it's not going to mean that you're going to become a mathematician or a physicist. But what it does mean is that if we can use our conscience. Now, this is very interesting, because human beings are the only animal that have a conscience. And the conscience acts as a mirror. It alone is the only function of the mind that can reflect perfect wisdom from the center of consciousness, from the superconscious portion of the mind. Our conscience, known as buddhi in Sanskrit, acts as a mirror and can reflect wisdom from the superconscious portion of the mind, and then reflect it from the superconscious portion of the mind into our conscious mind. So when your conscience suggests something to you, you don't need a PhD degree to know that it's true. You don't need a college degree to know that it's true. And you don't even need a high school degree to know that it's true. The only thing you need is the willpower to serve that wisdom in thought, word, and deed.
Okay. So when you go into meditation, for some of us, that voice is going to speak back to us. Now, it could be our voice coming back to us, wise, loving, and intentional. A part of us that we're not, of the answer that we were looking for in the moment now, of whatever the issue was that we could ask ourselves. It might come in thought of some way. It might be thoughts that come to you that are giving the answers. No,
none of that is true. In meditation is the only time that we impose only one specific object for us to give attention to. So any other competing thought, image, or sound during meditation is simply to be honored, witnessed as a manifestation of the one supreme reality, and then sacrifice it, let it go, and then bring our attention back to the one sole object that we are giving our attention to. And that one solitary object that we give our attention to in meditation is called mantra. A mantra, which is available in every spiritual tradition on the planet, are words or a series of words containing the name of the supreme reality. A word or a series of words containing the name of the supreme reality. Mantras, in effect, are perfect harmonics that will have three specific effects in on the unconscious mind every time we listen to it. It will generate love, it will generate fearlessness, and it will generate strength. Love and fearlessness and strength every time we listen to the mantra. In Christianity, for example, just the name of Jesus, 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 is a mantra. In the ancient Hebrew tradition, the modern Jewish tradition, Baruch Atah Adonai, Baruch Atah Adonai. In Hinduism, Rama, Rama, Rama. In Islam, Allah, Allah, Allah. And when we give attention to it, and we do this exclusively just on the mantra in order to train the mind. No one, not in school, colleges, or university, has ever taught us to train the mind. It's a novel idea. So we're training the mind on one pointed attention. What does that mean? If I can learn to give my full attention to this one object, I'm generating love and fearlessness and strength. And in that process, what I am doing, in effect, is I am creating a space between stimulus and response. Because if the truth be known, our mind is addicted to stimulation. Mm-hmm. When I was a child, we had 3 television stations. That was it, 3 television stations. That's in the United States. And today, we have thousands from cable. And on the internet, we have a seemingly infinite number of channels that we can choose from. But in meditation, we limit it to just one. What that means is the mind is going to look for something else. The mind, because it is addicted to stimulation, is going to want to change the channel. And so a thought comes from the unconscious mind. Hey, what's for dinner? Now food. I happen to love food, so maybe I'll think about food. Maybe I'll have Indian food tonight. Maybe I'll have Italian food. Maybe I'll have a leftover pizza. But if I think about food, well, then I'm not meditating. See, I'm thinking. So what I have to do is I have to maintain that space between stimulus and response. So I honor and witness any competing thought, image, or sound, sacrifice it, and then bring the mind back to the mantra. Bring the mind back to the mantra. If I can create a space between stimulus and response, that space provides me freedom to redirect my awareness to the conscience, to the buddhi, to find out whether this thought that evokes the image of food is to be served by thinking about it, or it's to be sacrificed in order to facilitate my going back, redirecting my attention back to the mantra to continue meditating. So in meditation, I create tools for myself for living in relationships. I create one-pointed attention, which can access the superconscious portion of the mind. That provides me one-pointed attention, discrimination, detachment, because I'm lengthening the space between stimulus and response. And through that whole process, if I really am doing it, I build the muscles of willpower. Now, with one-pointed attention and detachment and discrimination and willpower, I can apply all these tools to every single relationship for a successful resolution. That's called meditation in action.
Right.
So how often do I meditate? I am meditating in one form or another all day long.
Yeah, I mean, my version of meditation is completely different to that, but that's okay. You know, when I go out to the woods, which is very close to me right now, the place where I'm at currently right now, I can just stand in the woods. I can shut my eyes. I walk through a door, and I'm connected, once I walk through this door, to this greater part of myself, and I can ask it questions, and it's very loving, and it always gives me loving information, not forced information from me, but information that I need to hear at this time for whatever issues that I may have. And I find that my version of meditation, which is, again, very different to what you're talking about. And that's okay, I guess.
Well, let me point out that in classical yoga science, what you are describing is called contemplation. A quiet time where you sit down and you focus your attention on issues that need to be answered. What's to be done and what's not to be done. And then your inner wisdom can come forward to provide you the guidance. That's called contemplation. That's what I refer to as a pre-battle intelligence briefing. When I gave a lecture at West Point Military Academy in downstate New York, and the colonel who invited me when he heard about this contemplation practice asked me, did I know anything about military science? And I said, oh, certainly. I said, yoga science is the origin of military science. He says, that's very interesting, because what you're describing with contemplation, we call AAR in the Army. We call it after action review. And I said, of course you do. Why wouldn't you review what just happened so you don't repeat the mistakes of the past?
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess my form of the contemplative meditation is the only form that I've practiced. I find it so, as soon as I come out of that space,
Yes.
I just find it so beautiful. I just find it so, it's the only space.
But let's say you come out of that space. Let's say you come out of that space, right? And you get into your automobile, and you're driving home, still in that beautiful space, and then some maniac cuts you off in traffic, goes right in front of you, and you have to slam on your brake, and in that process, a bubble of anger comes forward from your unconscious mind, and you are aware of tremendous anger. And you forget that beautiful space that you had just been experiencing because you're triggered. And so what are you going to do with the anger?
Well, not
So all I'm saying is that meditation provides us a framework for transforming that anger. When you can honor, witness, and sacrifice the anger, the fear, and the selfish desires that conflict with inner wisdom, if you can not act on it and not repress it, but rather sacrifice it, sacrifice is the mechanism for transformation. Sacrifice is the mechanism for transformation.
I guess what my point was very simply that, by going into that space that I'm able to go into, by going through that door, that's just my process for doing it.
Yes.
I'm able to contact that greater part of myself that just knows that just seems to be that wiser part of myself that has the bigger picture, that can see the bigger picture. I can only see that much sometimes, and that higher self can is expansive and can see the greater picture sometimes, and it's I kind of use it for guidance as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not denying that, and I think that's terrific, and it's very valuable. My only question is, what do you do when Kevin's personality is hijacked by anger, is hijacked by fear, is hijacked by selfish desire?
I try to, in those cases, I try, if I can, try is the word, to remember my truth that I'm a soul having a human experience. I say try because, let's face it, does it really ever come out in the moment when those things are happening all the time? No, it'd be a lie to say that. But I try.
What yoga science helps us with is it provides us tools that advance our capacity to remember who we are, to remember those beautiful, harmonious moments. So the mantra at that moment will come forward in the form of love, fearlessness, and strength to help us do what's to be done, when it's to be done, and not do what's not to be done when it's not to be done. And the mantra comes forward, creates detachment from it,
Right.
and then I can use my conscience, my buddhi, to access wisdom from the superconscious portion of the mind. And when the conscience or the buddhi tells me that I need to sacrifice this anger, for example, if I can actually in the moment sacrifice the anger and its debilitating contractive form of energy, that debilitating contractive form of energy can be transformed. Anger, fear, and greed are just forms of energy. We know they can't be created. We know they can't be destroyed, but they can be transformed. Ice can melt into water. Water can be heated into steam. Anger, fear, and selfish desires are not bad. They're just pernicious, debilitating forms of energy. But if I sacrifice them back to the origin from which they came, they can be transformed into strategic reserves of a healing energy, willpower, and greater access to the superconscious mind.
What does yoga science teach us in the sense of creating our reality and creating a reality that we would like to have, or yeah, what does it say about that actually?
It says that we're the architects of our lives. We determine our destiny. And the equation has been referred to as the law of karma. The law of karma, which later became Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the law of karma states that thought leads to action, and action leads to consequence. Okay, so let's take a look at the consequence. Let's go to the end game. What do we want? More than anything else, in every relationship, what do we want? Well, on some level, and I know that words are just pointers, but just on some level, we all want to be happy. We want to be healthy, and we want to be secure. How are we going to get to point B from point A? That's the key. So if we want to be secure and healthy and happy, what gets us to point B from point A are our thoughts, our words, and our actions. It's an equation. Thoughts, words, and actions. Certain thoughts, words, and actions will equal happiness, health, and security. And so what yoga science is simply telling us is the correct thoughts, the correct words, and the correct actions to be taken within the constellation of relationships that we have over a lifetime are going to be best served if we can base our outer actions on our own inner wisdom. Again, Shakespeare, speaking as a yoga scientist, above all else, to thine own self be true. And so if we can create and employ a bridge of yoga that will encourage us, that encourages us in the moment to base our outer actions on our own superconscious wisdom by accessing the conscience and using it to reflect perfect wisdom, and then transforming that wisdom into my thoughts, my words, and my deeds. That, in fact, will bring me to fulfillment. The promise is that you will be, to the fullest extent possible, you will have a happy life, you will have a healthy life, and you will have a secure life. Now, I have to mention that this is all hearsay right now, okay? What I am saying is all hearsay. You have no idea whether it's true. In order to know that it's true, you have to allow your entire mind-body-sense complex to be a laboratory, to test it, to test what's to be done and what's not to be done according to your own inner truth, reflected by the conscience. And if you can do the experiment, I tell students, fake it until you make it. Just pretend that you're enlightened and base your outer action on your inner wisdom. And in order to do that, a lot of times we're going to have to let go of some old habit, fear, anger, judgment, resentment, jealousy, some form of insecurity or greed. Then, after you do the experiment, stand back objectively as the scientist. How do you feel? How do you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? My experience has been I have felt better physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that has motivated me to do another experiment, and another experiment, and another experiment.
Okay. So you may be drawn to, okay, so whatever you do in purpose-wise, probably be drawn to that which feels good, to that which is going to be the happiest outcome for you that you're after. Be drawn to do something that makes you happy. I suppose that's we don't need to live in suffering, do we? Or to have to,
that's a choice. I think that's a choice.
That's a choice. Yeah, right. So I'm trying.
I did have, by the way, I did have a relative who had lower back pain, and I myself had lower back pain as a younger person. But through my meditation practice and my easy gentle yoga practice, I don't have the back pain anymore. So I said to this person, he was my brother-in-law actually at the time. I said, you have lower back pain. I had lower back pain. Yours is not an operable condition. Mine was not an operable condition. And my meditation and my gentle yoga practice has relieved me of this pain. Would you like me to teach you some of these practices? And his response was very, very revealing, Kevin. What he said to me was, if I didn't have the pain in my back, how would I know who I was?
The More Show connects personal development, metaphysics, and consciousness tools for transformation, empowerment, and awakening. Please support this independent show so Kevin can continue to bring you the most inspiring and alternative interviews and videos. Go to www.themoreshow.com/donate. You can also support The More Show through Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/themoreshow. Or you can make a quick and easy donation from PayPal using paypal@themoreshow.com.
My name is Courtney Amundsen, and I offer private channeled readings to help you to connect with your soul and your divine purpose. You see, it's so beautiful because what I'm offering is to help you to step into your empowerment and your inner teacher, your inner divinity. And this is such a beautiful experience because it's coming home to your true self. It's unveiling what already is you. And in this place, you can live in guidance, you can live in freedom, you can live in your authenticity. So if this calls to you, you can book a reading with me at morechoice.com/Courtney. So thank you so much, and I hope that you join me soon.
Pain in my back, how would I know who I was? It's very sad. I mean, it brings a smile to one's face, but with a tear coming down the cheek. People identify with their pain.
Oh, they do. They're addicted to it. Absolutely addicted to it, and they don't want to let it go neither. Because
that's right.
Yeah.
So how happy do people really want to be? How healthy do people really want to be? How secure do they really want to be? So that's an important point to examine in our own lives.
But obviously, with yoga science, I mean, we've all got a purpose, haven't we? But, we've got to be drawn to what our purpose is, and we can attract that purpose into our life, like you say, by going within and coming from that space and that space. Well, I suppose it's a lot of love, isn't it? I suppose a lot of love.
It's all love.
Yeah.
If I have a relationship with you, Kevin, and in the process of having a relationship where we have to act back and forth, if I can take the obstacles that are in my mind, and I have obstacles, anybody with a body has obstacles. So if I can set aside my fear, if I can set aside my judgments and anger, if I can set aside my selfish desires, and then I can examine your mind, and I can set your handicaps aside, then all that will exist between us is love, which is the most ancient traveler, traveling from eternity to eternity.
Yeah, well, agreed. Absolutely, that's the true nature of who we are.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, okay. Well, there's a lot we've covered there, and the book as well, which has been coming up on the screen. It's an in-depth book, which is always good. I mean, you cover a lot in this book. Just sort of leading on from the mantra as well. Can we decide what our own mantra wants to be? Does it have to be a set mantra?
In the Heart and Science of Yoga, I present different mantras from various traditions, and I invite people to choose one that speaks to their heart. They should listen to the sound in the center of the chest and see how it feels. The power of the mantra is not in the meaning, it's in the vibration. Remember, we're talking about vibration here. We live in a very exciting time because quantum physicists are telling us that the entire universe is one holistic, vibratory organism. What makes us see two and things that are separate, as opposed to the one, which is the truth, is the limitation of our brain and our senses. But beyond that is one holistic organism. And so the vibration of the mantra is critically important. You listen to the syllables. Ra, ma, ra, ma. And in that process, you begin with full one-pointed attention to become aware of the space between syllables, the space between words. And the more attention you give it, you become aware of the fact that the mantra is actually arising from the silence. It's coming from the unknown. And then when it concludes, it returns to the silence. It returns to the unknown. Jesus. Jesus. Allah. Allah. And in deep meditation, when the mind and the mantra become one, the mantra returns to its source of origin in the silence, in the unknown, and the mind piggybacks a ride. And we experience the truth of that silence, that ocean of peace, bliss, and fullness.
Right.
And through that experience, we annihilate the space between the two. And when you annihilate the space between the two, when you really see one here, there, and everywhere, what is there to fear? Whom is there to fear if there's only one reality? And so the first great freedom that we experience is the freedom from fear.
I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, really. You know, when most Western people think of yoga, right, they're thinking of the as in the body, you know, as in movement of the body.
That's right.
But has that movement been hijacked the original version, I suppose, of what yoga was all about?
It's perfectly understandable. We have a physical culture worldwide. It's a physical culture. So the first aspect of yoga science that has become popularized are the physical exercises. That makes total sense to me. But the physical exercises of yoga are just a very small portion. I mean, it's a very important relationship. I have a body and I need to exercise the body. You know, we're running a marathon. We're not running a sprint. So the body is designed to support us for 120 years without pain, misery, or bondage, depending on how much conflict we can ameliorate in a particular lifetime. But there's so much more. Really, everything every aspect of yoga is about the mind, because even our relationship with the body and exercising the body is about the mind. In the time that we have left, I was wondering if I could just do a little yoga science experiment with you, Kevin.
Of course.
Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to raise your hand over your head. Can you do that? Just raise your hand right over your head and then bring it down. Okay? That's doable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'd like you to raise your right hand without entertaining a thought. Go ahead. It's impossible.
I did it. I did it.
No. I don't think so. I don't think so. Try it again. Without a thought. No thought. See if your hand and arm can move up without a thought.
Well, would the thought, the initial thought, be to raise the arm? I'm guessing, but
Yes. It's very subtle, but without the thought, the hand and the arm will not go up. The mind moves first, the body follows. The mind moves first, the body follows. This is the mind-body connection. It's one holistic organism. Mm-hmm. No thought, no action. I mean, the arm and the hand have muscles. They're capable, but without that will force of being impelled to go up from the mind, it's not going to happen.
No.
That's a very, very profound understanding of what's happening all the time. Our thoughts, our words, and our actions are constantly creating our destiny.
So what's that? Well, this is my point initially, right? Was, well, not initially, but just at the beginning part of the interview, that, you know, we may, in regards to attracting our whatever we desire or whatever we would like to have in our reality, is that yes, our thoughts do as you say, our thoughts are our destiny, aren't they? I can't remember the way you just put it there, but basically, if you've got something negative about the decisions that you're trying to make going on as well, which most of us have, right? That's why the things in your life are not happening, because one breath you're saying, oh yes, I really want this, they're saying that out loud to the universe, and on the other hand, like, but I'm not sure I'm worthy of it.
One step forward, two steps back. That's right. So the ancient Upanishads, these ancient scriptures, tell us that we are our deepest driving desire. We are our deepest driving desire. As our deepest driving desire is, so is our will. As our will is, so is our deed. As our deed is, so becomes our destiny.
How, okay, so what would yoga science say, in the sense of, okay, you may know what it is you would love to experience, you would love to have, you would love to, whatever your purpose may be, and if you've not got the noise of others where you're asking them whether it's okay or not, you're just going with that deeper sense of you that you know is the right thing for you. What does yoga science say about cutting off those other voices, which are the negative voices that are that where you're saying, yeah, but you know, is that the right thing I should be doing, or whatever it may be, that voice that's tucked behind the voice of knowing what you want?
So what yoga science says is, before you commit your assets in the form of a thought, a word, or an action, your happiness, your health, and your security depend on your ability to understand and coordinate the four functions of the mind. Your happiness, your health, and your security depend on your ability to understand and coordinate the four functions of the mind. The four functions of the mind, first is the manas. The manas is that function of the mind that engages the senses to go out into the material world, to look and smell and taste, hear, touch, and bring back information about the universe into our awareness. That's the manas. The second function of the mind is the ego. The ego is very interesting. The ego walks around all the time with a chainsaw and cuts everything in two. It's either pleasant and attractive and good, or it's unattractive, it's unpleasant, and it's bad. And the ego is always encouraging us to go for the pleasant and what it defines as good, because it reprises a memory of pleasure. And the ego is always advising us to avoid that which is unpleasant. So that's the ego. So we have the senses, we have the ego, and we have the unconscious mind, this repository of all of these thoughts, these desires, these emotions, all of these factors that we deem essential to self-preservation. They're all stored in the unconscious mind. So after the senses bring back information into our awareness, after the ego weighs in and tells us what it thinks is pleasant and what it thinks is good and what it thinks is unpleasant and what it thinks is bad, and when we receive this stored knowledge from the unconscious mind, then the manas says, look here, Kevin, you have two basic choices. You have alternative A and you have alternative B. A has these consequences, B has these consequences. Kindly make a decision and take an action. Then the manas says, Kevin, you have two basic choices. You have alternative A with these consequences and alternative B with these consequences.
Yeah.
Kindly make a decision and take an action. And then the manas says, look, Kevin, you have two basic choices, A or B, A or B, A or B. A has these consequences, B has these consequences. Kindly make a decision and take an action. That's a very familiar place for all of us. And it's exhausting. It's a battery drainer. And yet, the senses, the ego, and the unconscious mind have just told us an awful lot about the world and about possible relationships in the world. But if the truth be known, the senses only have a limited perspective. The ego only has a limited perspective. The unconscious mind only has a limited perspective. The conscience, the buddhi, is on the roof and has a 360-degree panoramic view. And it is the buddhi, our conscience, that is the only function of the mind that can discriminate, determine, judge, and decide. So all yoga, all union, all happiness, all health, all security begin with an understanding of and a coordination of the functions of the mind. We need to coordinate the senses, coordinate the limited perspective of the ego, coordinate the limited perspective of the unconscious mind with the all-knowing wisdom that's reflected by the buddhi, by our conscience.
Right.
And the more that we can do that, we will be led to a consequence where we will say, when we experience it, I feel happy.
Yeah.
I feel healthy. I feel secure.
For me, right, I still think you're talking about a funny little thing that I do where I'm able to tap into this superconscious mind part of myself, this higher self, and bring in the answers that I was always looking for, that I am looking for in the moment now. And I think by going into that space, just as your teachings talk about as well, in a completely different way, but it's the same energy field. All answers lie within. I always say that to people, all answers lie within. And I think what you've got to say is very, very beautiful, very deep as well. And you've done a really elegant job of putting this book together. You really have. Now, if people
Let me just say, Kevin, that you're absolutely correct in your observation. I saw an interview once with the founding president of Sony, and he was being interviewed on television. And the question was, you only went to the 6th grade. How do you make these very important decisions
right.
that affect thousands and thousands of
right.
people? And his answer was very yogic. he said, well, when I have an important decision, I bring it into my gut. If it feels okay, I go with it. If it doesn't feel okay, I let it go. And very often, our intuition is clearer to us through our gut than intellectualizing it in the head.
And what is that intuition in the gut? Where is that coming from? That's coming from the superconscious side.
It's coming from the superconscious portion of the mind. That's right.
Now, for myself, I've struggled in my life to connect to the gut, to the superconscious mind. For myself, I find it easier to walk through that door in my head and then connect to my superconscious mind like that. Maybe that's just my routine for doing it. However it works, right?
Perfect.
But I tell you what, when you do through the gut or whatever method works for you, where you can speak, and your method as well, which is just as valid, what we've been talking about throughout this interview. Oh my God, what's on that other side? It's just amazing, and we ignore it all the time. And even when we've got the ability to go within and listen to the gut, some of us, we don't do it enough. It's always there. But I will say this, ex-partner, she would always go with her gut, and she done very well because of that. What is good, what is bad, what is well, what is success? I'm not going to label that. We'll let someone else label that. I don't care about that, right?
That's right.
But because it's a personal journey, that is. But
that's correct.
When you do go within, it just wants the best for you. It's almost like it's the parent side of you. It's that loving.
That's right.
Yeah, it's unexplainable.
This is the process of learning how to parent ourselves.
Now,
we have to parent the mind. We're parenting the mind. We're parenting the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind.
Exactly. Now,
we're sitting them all around the kitchen table and saying, "Look, you have a good idea, but it's a limited perspective,
right?
And the conscience is overruling it. Your gut is overruling you. Listen, when we're driving a car, we need the ego. We need a healthy ego to be able to be a teacher. You need a healthy ego. It's not about getting rid of the ego. It's not. We have a body. We have senses. Life is to be enjoyed. It's not about letting go of all sense gratification.
No, I completely agree with you there. I would like to say let's meet the ego and the superconscious halfway. That's rather than elimination or addiction to either one on opposite ends. And just what you were saying there as well. I'll add this as well. That sometimes people may think, well, what if it tells me to do something quite negative, or what if it's leading me up the wrong path? One, it never does that. If something's coming through that's negative from that experience, well, that's not your superconscious mind talking. It doesn't. It's not going to tell you to do something stupid.
But you bring up an extremely important point, and that is that we don't want to take on too much too soon, because it's going to threaten the ego so much that we're going to give up our yoga practice. We're going to give up checking with our gut. Okay? So the highest principle of all of yoga science is ahimsa, non-injury, non-harming. Every thought, every word, every act must be in harmony with ahimsa. It must be non-injurious. And what that means is, when we start the path, we are not to take on too much too soon. And so we start with seemingly insignificant no-brainers. Remember, we're scientists now. We're yoga scientists. We're doing experiments. We want to do easy experiments so that we can increase our energy, our willpower, and our creativity, and the love and fearlessness and strength that will help us to deal with emotionally charged issues. But initially, start with a no-brainer. You just finished dinner. Are you going to brush your teeth? Well, what does the ego say? What do the senses say? What does the unconscious mind say? They're all going to say, let's forget about it. What is your conscience going to say? You need to brush your teeth. Mm-hmm. And so if you can do that, in the process of doing something that's easy, you increase your energy, your willpower, and your creativity. And if you keep on banking every day, numerous times, with things that are easy, you're going to have lots of energy, lots of willpower, and lots of access to the superconscious portion of the mind that will benefit you in a variety of relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, we're almost at the end here, and I appreciate you just staying with us on this, because this has been so important, I think. Important for a lot of people as well that's going to watch this. Now, what would you say is the most important message of your book to begin with, just very briefly?
I believe that the most important message is that every single thought that comes into your awareness is only a suggestion of what to give your attention to. It is not an imperial command. Every thought is only a suggestion. It's not a command. And the key to successful living is to create a space between stimulus and response. Before you commit your assets to that thought, vet it. What does the conscience say? Is this to be served, or is it to be sacrificed?
Yeah, absolutely. And if people watching this want to know, find out more information about yoga science, how can they? What do you offer? Any sort of courses? I mean,
Yes, we have courses all the time, both at the Home Center in Averill Park, New York, in the United States, as well as online. We founded in 1996, myself and my wife, Janice, the American Meditation Institute, and our website is americanmeditation.org, americanmeditation.org, and we sell the book, The Heart and Science of Yoga. We have other books. We have courses. We have online courses that are seen around the world in real time, where you can ask questions and participate. Things like the chakra system, courses. We have a weekly course on the study of the perennial psychology of the Bhagavad Gita. And we also have a 5.5-hour online video course, which presents the entire core curriculum in lecture form, video lecture form, that covers the entire content of The Heart and Science of Yoga.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've been putting your website on throughout this interview, along with your book as well.
That's very kind.
So that's been coming on. And again, it's all in the description for this video at the bottom as well. Well, I'd just like to say, Leonard Perlmutter, just thank you so much for coming on today and explaining your truth on connecting to this superconscious mind. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it deeply.
Well, we've come to an end on today's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests by going to themoreshow.com, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.
My name is Courtney Amundsen, and I offer private channeled readings to help you to connect with your soul and your divine purpose. You see, it's so beautiful because what I'm offering is to help you to step into your empowerment and your inner teacher, your inner divinity. And this is such a beautiful experience because it's coming home to your true self. It's unveiling what already is you. And in this place, you can live in guidance, you can live in freedom, you can live in your authenticity. So if this calls to you, you can book a reading with me at morechoice.com/Courtney. So thank you so much, and I hope that you join me soon.